Hey everyone, and welcome back to the weekly Unreal Engine Twitch live stream. I'm your host, Community Manager Chance Ivy, and I'm here with General Counsel Canon Pence and VP of Business Affairs Jay Wilbur. We're going to talk over all kinds of business and legal stuff. Business. Yeah, all the scary stuff about making games. For that, let's head over to the news, Shelley, if we could. So up front here, we just launched this morning announcement about Unreal Engine 4 releasing with Steam VR support. So as soon as preview release for 4.8.1, preview release 1 for 4.8 comes out, which should be within the next week or so, don't hold us to that, you will be able to access the Steam VR, all the development tools for that. So our guys in Seattle have been working really hard with the team at Valve to get that working, and there's actually a jam going on with this technology in Austin next weekend where myself and Alan Willard, super senior tech artist and designer, are going to be heading down.
Otherwise known as the man.
Yeah, the man, and me.
No,
and
the man.
Oh,
get it
man.
right.
Is that what we?
Yeah, duh. Well, I do.
Okay, great. I'll have to keep that in mind when I address him in the future. So this is happening. Alchemy Labs is putting it on in Austin. It is on the 9th and the 10th. You can check out our blog for more info. Sign up for the event. I think that there's still room in it. It's on 411 West Monroe. So yeah, check it out. I will be there. If you're in Austin, come by, say hey.
And if anybody's in Austin and you want to have a chance to look at the Vive, you really should go because it is the stuff. It's really good.
Yeah, it's. I've heard it's great. I've only seen the hardware. I haven't had it on my face yet. But
cool.
were you one of the lucky ones that?
Yes. My lottery ticket came up at the show at GDC, and I got a chance to experience it. It's amazing.
What about Canon, you?
We don't know. We don't have like the dev team knocking on my door saying like, this is ready to go, but
the lawyers have to test
know
it first.
if you like it.
They don't do that?
No.
Oh, well,
no.
It doesn't help that they're also.
It's usually like, it's gone. I hope that was okay.
Actually, Valve should put the EULA in the Vive itself.
That's right.
So
like
you have to read it.
It's the first. What if it's
a whole Star Wars thing with
the first 3D EULA? This is like
that.
This is like the
the
frontier
for.
For
is this how the stream's gonna go?
It's the final frontier for the law. VR interactive licenses. You can switch the terms
you
around.
You can just
kind of
walk. You can actually. It's like any. There's the whole John Oliver thing about it. If you want to do something evil, hide it in something boring. Well, this is a way to make EULAs not boring. Right?
Absolutely.
All right, back to the news. Let's get back on track here. Afterwards, they're actually doing a demo night on Monday, showing off all the games and projects. I guess there's way more than games if you don't have VR at Vuku as well. So if you're in the area, check those things out. All the info is on our blog. And let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, so Marketplace sale has been extended to Sunday. So the 3 packs that were on sale last week are continuing to stay on sale. And you should be able to go check those out. And you should go buy them because they're all really great. I have them all myself, and I make things that nobody gets to see because they keep me hidden in the cave. I'm just kidding. On that note, there is a Marketplace release happening, I do believe. We don't have the announce out for it quite yet, but look out for that later today or later this week. And let's see. So you might remember Space Dust Racers. They were at GDC with us. We've had them on the Community Spotlight in the past. A really great team out of Australia. They've launched their Kickstarter earlier this week. And so if you like the game, which you should because it's awesome, I suggest you head over to their Kickstarter page and back this project. It's a lot of fun.
Doing it right now.
Yeah, if you're a fan of any kind of kart racing, it's actually like kind of more combat than racing, if you will. But CTR was really special to me as a child, and of course everybody's always loved Mario Kart since.
I feel like CTR gets short shrift. I love that game.
I know nobody talks about it anymore.
I love that game.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It was one of those one of the first I wanted to get all the achievement type things before achievements were there. Like I had to do everything in that. Yeah.
It had like the perfect balance.
Oh, so good. Anyway, so Space Dust Racers, fantastic game out of the Space Dust Studios guys, aptly named. All right, and another licensing news: Ether One, the White Paper Games game that launched on Steam last year that has been moved over to PS4. We had these guys out with us at EGX. Pete from the team was out with us at GDC. They are part of the PS Plus special for the month of May, so you can pick up Ether 1 now if you have a PS4. It's a fantastic game. I I cannot wait to get home and actually download it. I haven't had the opportunity yet, but I played it on Steam. It looks great in PS4, on PS4 and UE4. So definitely go check that out, and congratulations to those guys. And then in engine news, there's a engine features preview that we just dropped, I believe, yesterday. Yep, 4/29 while I was traveling. There's the new asset size mapper, which is really nice little tool to find out how much space things take up.
Otherwise known as Genius.
Yeah, otherwise known as where LOL, where's my memory being taken, and a bunch of other little tinier guys in here too. But the asset mapper is the size mapper is my favorite thing. So check that out. It is on our forums right now, in announcements and releases. You'll find it under the preview prefix. And with that, we've also got, let's see, learning resources. On Tuesday, we did a creating a 2D side scroller live training stream with Alan Noon. Really excellent. He gave the talk at ECGC earlier this month, and it was stellar. We've already got it up on to YouTube in 1080p. I know you guys have been asking for that a lot. Thank you, Shelly, for making that work. It took the whole night to push the 25 gigabyte file into the cloud, but now it is there for your viewing pleasure. So head over to youtube.com/Unreal Engine and check it out. With that, we'll move on over to Community Spotlight. And let's see, what is this? Oh, that is my email. Awesome. All right. Oh, very good, Shelly. You are so smart. All right, so
spam in there. Did you see that?
yeah, that's.
Sorry.
You say spam? No, I'm just no.
It was a spam.
So the first one we got up here is The Watchmaker by Micropsia Games. I'm gonna hop into the video and just kind of scrub ahead. It's a little bit longer of a. Oh no, no. Hang on.
That never happens.
We just reinstalled everything on this computer, and so I'm trying to see if I can get. Oh, I guess we're going with Windows Media Player recommended settings. If it'll do those things, be my friend. Yes. All right. Up we go. All right. And I'm going to hop ahead. So there's a lot of intro here, but I am going to get to some more of the juicy gameplay
That's
stuff.
good.
Where are we? Forgive me and my slow scrubbing. All right, we'll start right about here. Yeah, so a Watchmaker is a puzzle adventure game where the player solves a lot of mechanical puzzles as this little man named Alexander here. You can see this number on his back. It's actually his age. He's got this disease that is making him age more quickly. And so you've got to do things to kind of like, take time back off your age, or, things will make it move forward more quickly. And so you're trapped in this magical world and trying to stay alive. So
it's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Really awesome.
I know. I'm a big fan of the style. Making good use of some PBR in there too, with some of the the clockwork kind of feel to it.
With all the gears and stuff.
Yeah.
It's got a really, I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of steampunkish.
Yeah.
Kind of stylized.
Do you know a lot about gears?
Boom, hey now.
So yeah, he's got this little magnetic glove that he uses.
I'm sorry, we're not allowed to
manipulate
talk about that
everything.
anymore.
Okay.
Wait, no, we're talking about these gears.
Oh, those gears, yes. I'm sorry.
No, so it's kind of like Cogs. There's an old puzzle game on PC called Cogs. Really small game that was about, a lot of mechanical puzzles, essentially. So anyway, so that's the Watchmaker from Micropsia. And with that, let me...
Creepy guy.
Yes. There's a
there's
a forum thread on it here that you can. There's a forum thread on it here. You can hop in and say hello. Tell them what you think. All right. Next thing we've got now is Quanta. Quanta was a game that was a game prototype submitted to the Ubisoft Game Lab competition 2015, and they won a few awards here, like best overall, best art direction, and best quality of the 3 Cs. So I'm going to go ahead and open that video as well. We're going to hop ahead. Now this one is, I wish I could show the whole thing, wish we had time, but I'm just going to jump to this.
Oh, this looks sweet.
Beautiful game. It's a 2-player game, where one of you is kind of playing at the micro level of the map, and one of you is kind of more at the macro. So one guy is here walking around the little planets, and the other guy is this dragon, and you're solving puzzles together.
Oh, this is sweet.
Yeah. So it's I don't exactly know what the timeline was for this, but it's some of the students in some of the Montreal schools. I know Nad was part of it. And there's the team of about 10, I think, when I was looking back over it.
Reminds me a little bit of Flow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like Flow and Mario Galaxy because they hop
Yep.
stuff on these little planets to do little things. But yeah, some
With the big thing from Neverending Story.
Falcor,
Falcor.
Falcor.
the Luck Dragon.
Do you remember the name of his horse?
Wait, which one?
The main kid's
Oh.
horse.
Bastion or Atreyu?
Atreus' horse.
Oh
I
no.
don't think Sebastian had a horse. Artax.
Oh, that's right.
Artax.
You've got me there.
Damn.
Yeah,
That's hardcore.
it's getting deep.
That's hard.
Anyway, so Quanta is our second of our. I love that we just kind of derail our own conversations. Quanta is the second in our community spotlight, and they've actually they're going to release the game as the prototype here on the forums in a couple days, they say. So I'm going to hold them to that by just pinging this thread until I get something because I want to play this.
Yeah, this looks great.
Anyway, really cool work. And then the last one I got, no video on this. Well, there is a video, but it's very long. This came across Twitter the other day. It's from Ali Akbar. It's a Dungeon Architect plugin. Now, I wonder what you're thinking. What is that? It's really just an extension of tools, extension of the editor that allows you to really quickly create like procedural dungeons based on volumes. So you drag and move and scale volumes that will allow you to build very quickly different layouts for dungeons or top-down games just by moving a single actor out there. Like it can be, you can use meshes, you can use actors, you can use lights. He's extending it over and over again to make it more and more and more flexible. But yeah, you can follow along progress here. It's really, really cool. If I can get down to here's this video. Like I said, it's 40 minutes long. Goes over the entire thing.
Just set it up. We're done for the day.
Yeah, exactly. I think like later in here, it kind of shows how the volumes work. But you build one of these little dungeons, and then you drag the volumes, and as you drag it and let go of it, it'll recreate all
Dude,
the
that's
pathing
awesome.
and
It's
everything
like the
for it.
easy button for dungeon
Yeah, pretty
creation.
much. Exactly. You declare like a floor and a wall, stairs, all those kind of things. You set up all the different custom parameters there, and then as you move it, it'll actually recreate all that. Like
Oh wow! Yeah, I saw that. That's awesome.
And those are two different volumes, right? So it's a really cool tool. I want to be able to pull it down and see what I can do with it. So
That's
anyway.
impressive.
Yeah, so good stuff, guys. Keep up the awesome work. Stay being rad. All right, with that, on to
Hey, being rad.
yeah, onto the
All of you, it's
the more meaty of the conversation here. Now that we're done just bantering about everyone else, so welcome to the stream, Canon and Jay.
Thanks, man.
Why don't you give us a little bit about yourselves first, and then we'll hop into some of the heavy hitting topics of the.
Sure. I'm Epic's general counsel, which means it's lead attorney. In this case, only attorney also. Makes it
By
easier.
default.
So you're also the worst attorney we have.
Also the worst,
Yeah.
unless we count outside counsel.
And the best.
I would.
And
And so I'm in charge of Epic's legal affairs and managing outside counsel, and that's for Epic worldwide. I've been working with Epic indirectly since 2007 as outside counsel, doing litigation, and then came in house like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that.
5 years ago.
Cool. That's awesome.
Awesome. Jay Wilbur, Vice President of Business Affairs. I've been with Epic, golly, about 18 years now.
Just a couple.
Yeah, stop counting after about 12.
Yeah.
Having so much fun, time just flies.
Yeah.
So I manage the business side of the business. Our engine licensing teams, our business development teams, Canon, they report to me, and it's fun. It's a fun job.
Yeah, and so with that, I mean, 18 years at Epic, but I mean, you've been part of the game business for a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
I'd say just a couple, right?
So, yeah, just a few years before that. So prior to Epic, I had the pleasure of being with id Software. Actually, id Software started in a house that John Carmack and I shared back in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I met all those guys through prior businesses or prior engagements where I worked at a company called Sofdisk in Shreveport, Louisiana, and then actually knew John Romero and another original id guy called Lane Roth back at a company called Uptime, which was out of Newport, Rhode Island. So, yeah, it's back then it was just the it's very similar to how Epic got its start. It was just a bunch of numbskulls who wanted to make games, and we were those numbskulls. We weren't in it. I mean, the money. It was more passion, and it's what continues to be at Epic now. It's more passion driven than anything else. We're blessed in that we created games and product that people wanted, and in every instance, we always knew we had something fun going on.
Right.
But as with id and as we moved towards Epic, and the same thing with Epic, we were always pleasantly surprised by the reception and the success. So it's just awesome. I feel totally blessed to be involved with these shops.
Yeah, and what's really crazy about that too, it's like, we talk about the business of making computer games, or like, consumer games post, like, the large drop in '84 and Nintendo and everything coming back around. You were around for a lot of the
Yes, I'm old.
I'm
old. I get it.
yes, great. Next. No, but you're around for a lot of what the business is, today, and a lot of that model before it existed. And
we've seen multiple shifts.
Yeah,
I've seen multiple shifts from the bottom dropping out through the rise of PC, through the rise of console, through the re-rise of PC.
Oh yes.
Now. The rise of mobile.
Now
the rise of free to play.
Now consoles are PCs.
Consoles,
if you look at
yes,
it.
the lines are it's very interesting times. It's harder. It's really hard to the crystal ball is very fuzzy as you sort of project out even a year or so.
Well, even with that, you spend a lot of time in our other foreign markets too.
I do.
Quite a bit of time.
Yes,
I see you in the office. Like we joke about it. It's like, wow, I've seen you twice this month.
Yes, I'm the incredible invisible person.
Yeah, that's great.
I spend a lot of time in our shops in Korea, Japan, China, and in Europe, and it's really interesting to see what's going on in some of those other marketplaces. We watch our friends in Korea and our friends in China quite intently, because a lot of what is going on there is the sort of the pre-indicators of what's going to happen, what happens around the world.
Other places.
So it's one thing I would suggest. It's as from a business point of view, if you want to know what's going to happen tomorrow, pay attention to what's happening in marketplaces where they have shown time and time again that they're sort of leading the charge.
Yeah, trend starts somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The wave has to start somewhere, and so understand how it's going, and you can surf it rather than get knocked over.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. Well, I'm glad we could get you in, for this.
Oh, it's awesome. We're really happy to be here.
Canon, you stay in the office pretty regularly.
I do. They don't let me out.
They don't let you go anywhere.
No.
I do pizza once a week.
I refer back to my only attorney comment earlier.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So yeah, you had some talking points that we discussed before.
Sure. Yeah.
Whatever. But
so we wanted to give before taking questions, just stuff we thought was really important from a legal standpoint. I appreciate VFE's comments earlier that legal is super important. I totally agree. It may not always be fun, but businesses can rise and fall on it. Before I start, some boring legalese, I guess. Disclaimer, exactly.
Liar.
I'm Epic's attorney. I'm not your attorney. I can talk about legal information here. I can't give legal advice to you. So don't take what I'm giving here as legal advice to you. I encourage you to seek your own counsel from an attorney if you have legal questions that are specific to you. It's probably a good idea to have an attorney. And in your questions, don't reveal confidential information, and don't ask questions that are super fact specific to you. I won't be able to answer that, but I can talk generally about things you should be concerned about. Jay and I prepared a overview of a couple topics.
I don't give a crap. I'll talk about anything. No, I'm
he
just
can
kidding.
talk about anything. That's right.
he's not kidding, but we're trying to keep him.
So a couple of high-level things you should be aware of. First up is business entity formation. So this is moving from a sole proprietorship where you are yourself, you are the individual and a business entity, and moving into a formal business entity, which can be a corporation, a LLC, partnership, etc.
Limited, depending on what country you're in.
Right. Depends on country, depends on state in the United States. So you have to look into the laws, corporate formation laws of where you work. But general idea is things are very simple. If you're an individual running a business, you don't have to form a business entity. You can sell just as a sole proprietor, and you can pay taxes on that business as an individual. When you start hiring employees and start entering into, say, like a publishing agreement.
That's like full-time employees, right? Not like if you're just contracting somebody to help out.
Right, yeah. Contractors are different than employees. And from a general standpoint, the biggest reason to form a business entity is to protect yourself as an individual. That's the whole point of a corporation or a limited liability partnership, et cetera, is to separate the individual from the business from a liability standpoint. So the way it should work and the way it's supposed to work, and it should in most instances, is if the business incurs liabilities at the close of the business goes under, that business formation should protect you as an individual. So the business may go out of business, it may go bankrupt, et cetera, but the point is to try and protect you.
Consider it a firewall.
Yeah,
it's a firewall between you and the business, so that they're two separate entities.
So you're saying the mistakes you make in the business, you don't have to be accountable for.
Not exactly.
Not really. No.
Yeah. And there are ways. You can't use a corporation to perpetrate fraud as an individual.
Right.
But
No. Oh.
yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta talk to you about that later.
Yeah. Explicitly, we are not encouraging that behavior.
But if you put out a game and you get sued into non-existence for patent infringement, that should stop at the suing into non-existence of that company and not you as a person, right? So if you've got a house.
They sue you into
Right?
non-existence.
So if a business has a house, that's an asset of the
Right.
business,
Yes.
and it's subject to a judgment in court. But if you have a business entity, then you as an individual can own a home, and that can be separate from, as an example. So those are high-level reasons for that. Next up, IP overview. We get a lot of questions on AnswerHub. I try and handle a lot of them personally.
And you are a rock star on that regard, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Not like
I should have said that. Canon Pence, you may know him from AnswerHub.
AnswerHub Rockstar.
You got that going for you.
He's got like what? How much karma on there? Like
I don't know. I had 666 karma, and I was like,
Of
can I
course you
like
did.
not?
How does that work?
Yeah,
can I-
Karma
like,
of the
how do
beast.
I?
Go downvote something. It should like
Yeah,
change
exactly.
it a little bit. Yeah.
I thought about gaming it, and it sounded like too much trouble. But I do see some confusion about IP. Like people say, does it infringe Epic's copyright if I use the word Unreal in my game title? So just a brief overview of forms of IP. Trademark is a word or an image mark that identifies a source of goods. So for Epic, big ones are Epic Games and the Epic Games logo, Unreal Engine and Unreal Engine logo as examples. So when someone sees Epic Games or Unreal Engine or the Circle U logo, they say, oh, that's an Unreal. That's Unreal. That means it comes from Epic. I know and love and trust Epic, so that must be a quality good or service.
It is.
So the reason it exists is companies want to protect the value of that, and they don't want another company to start using that Circle U, and so that people start to trust it, even though it's not from Epic.
And which then like waters down your brand. And
It can. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
it
right.
can be
Yeah.
detrimental
And creates
to you.
confusion in the marketplace, which is ultimately what the trademarks are designed to prevent.
And from a game perspective, so if you're a game developer, a trademark would chiefly cover your entity name and the title of your games. So that gives you protection from other people misusing, and it gives you exclusivity and protection in terms of you're using that in the market before another entity. So if someone says, I've got a game coming out next year and it's the exact same title as yours, you can say,
You have to use that face though. You have to throw the finger up like that. It's written into those like agreements.
That's right.
isn't it?
Under North Carolina law.
Okay. Good.
All right.
Mileage may be different from where you're at.
Yeah.
Copyright is the expression of an idea at its highest form. So it can't just be an idea, it's the expression, and that usually comes in the form of art, text. It can cover game artwork, source code, video, music. Those are sculpture. Those are the general characteristics. The Copyright Office doesn't specifically recognize video games as like its own form of copyright, like a movie or literature, but it's essentially a combination of movie, art, and code in the form.
It's got a whole
source.
bunch of those pieces already
That's
built
right.
into one
Put together.
big
That's
thing.
right. I think eventually they will recognize it independently, but
Yeah.
anyway, that covers that. So if somebody steals your character from a game, or steals your dialogue, or steals your music, that's a copyright infringement. There is patent, and patent is generally speaking a unique, new, and original business process, or what doesn't have to be business process method. So if you've come up with a totally new way for bike gears to work, those are traditional ones, So somewhere along the lines, like a blender was probably a patent. On the game side, it's a little newer because software patents weren't recognized by the U.S. until relatively recently in the course of legal history, so like maybe 2 decades.
Yeah.
And they're controversial, but that could cover in your game software really new and original techniques and processes. Those are less common on the game developer side. They're very expensive to pursue. It can cost thousands, tens of thousands of dollars.
Typically something you might want to look into if you think that your idea or process is something that is going to revolutionize something to the point that it's going to make you so much money that it's going to not be worth it for you to do it, right? Is that?
Yes. I guess from a general standpoint, as a starting developer, trademark and copyright are the most important.
Yes.
Trademark and copyright.
Patent, because of the expense and due to the kind of shaky nature of software patenting generally in U.S. legal landscape, that's usually something for deeper pockets.
Yeah.
Because it's a big investment in terms of time and money that may or may not pay off in the future. But yes, there are times where you've got some really killer idea that you've implemented in your code that is, you're sure is going to be the next thing. So if you were like developing Oculus Rift for the first time, right?
Right.
So years ago, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. And the last one is trade secrets, which are kind of like patents or copyright. So there's valuable things that
Are they written on little notes and passed?
That's right. Yeah, you've got it in the famous examples are baked beans recipe or the Coca-Cola recipe. So there's this thing that's really valuable, and its value chiefly derives from it being secret.
Oh,
so,
okay, yeah.
It's usually not applicable to games. It could be like so if Unreal Engine we only kept to ourselves, that could be a trade secret.
Well, yeah, but I mean our source code's
right now it's public, so it's not free. So those are the high-level types of IP, just to give you an overview and understanding. A couple of other things that are worth talking about at a high level, especially as indie developers are getting started. I understand that contracting labor is really common. So an understanding of IP ownership related to third-party content is super important. So if you pay a person to write you music for your game, you hire an artist, or at an even more basic level, we've gotten questions like, I'm making a fighting game, I want to put Sonic in it.
Yep.
Is that okay? So I'm not your lawyer. That's kind of a bad idea.
Yeah, if you're thinking about using some bit of IP or some character or music that somebody else, somebody else owns it. think
right.
twice, stop,
Right.
because you don't want to get too far down the line and where it becomes something that you can't pull out without changing the nature of the game.
It's like you and I were talking about earlier about, Star Wars, right? Like you're making a Star Wars game. It's like, well, how can like only go so far as you can take the Star Wars out of it, right? And it still is a thing, and
That's
it's still
right.
okay, right?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen and heard of people making the mistake of like, I'm going to put all this effort into this demo or prototype, and then I'm going to pitch it to the IP owner,
Yeah.
and it's going to be so awesome, they're going to love it. But, traditionally companies are, no matter how awesome it is, they want to own and control their IP, and they're not in the business of licensing it.
And there's also people have come back. I've heard the argument, well, it's free. I'm making this thing, and I'm going to give it away for free. Therefore, there's no possible way for damages.
Right.
It's a free thing, and
Not the case.
there you go.
But that comes back to the whole trademark thing, right? Too, like now it is these things are owned
Okay.
by them, and now
That's right.
you
That's right.
you are representing them,
Yes.
like
That's right.
at that point.
And then from the contracting standpoint, or if you found something on the internet, if you didn't create it, you the game owner and developer, it didn't come from you, or if you're an entity, your employees, you should take care to understand the IP rights associated with. So if you're hiring a contractor, that contract should make sure that you own the rights to what you're paying for, right? Especially in Europe, where they have IP rights that are, let's say, a little deeper than what we have in the United States. So it's important. I would certainly highly recommend employing counsel to help you with a rock solid third-party contractor agreement, so that if your game's a big hit, you don't have someone coming back and saying,
Right.
you don't own the rights to that music in terms of selling the game in China.
Right.
I only agreed that you could do it in the U.S.
So bottom line is make sure that if you're going to work with a contractor, make sure that you have an absolute understanding of the relationship that's been
Right.
memorialized in a piece of paper, a legal document. Don't start off with just a high five and then
Yeah.
let it go and let
Oh,
it.
yeah, gentleman's handshake
Yeah,
or a gentleman's
yeah,
agreement via
yeah.
handshake, right? Yeah, I've run into situations before where working on smaller mobile games, where we contract somebody, and they're like, the terms are for release for this title, for these markets and this platform, for X amount of dollars,
Yeah.
or you can own it for everything for X. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things because it's valuable to them to be able to do that. Like if you're a content creator and you're not building your own game and you're the flip side of the coin there, and you're trying to sell your wares to other people that are building games.
Yep.
That's a way to protect yourself as well as that same agreement, in a way that doesn't leave you vulnerable, right? Like you're licensing your music to go to one thing. Know that well whenever you enter that relationship.
And when money gets involved, sometimes things change. You could be the best of friends with a group of people and start doing stuff, but it's interesting the dynamic that goes in when money comes in. Sometimes nothing changes and you remain the best of friends forever and ever, and you can go along with a handshake or a high five or just nothing whatsoever. Or
Right.
sometimes things
Yeah.
change. Best to have a firm understanding.
Yeah.
And have a great understanding amongst the group that you're working with, so that at the end of the day there can be no question.
You still owe me that $5 for that pizza I made you. by the way.
That was 10 years ago.
Well, now with interest.
A couple other high-level items. Crowdfunding comes up a lot. It's so much more popular now than it used to be. I guess it didn't really exist before.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity for starting developers to get funds. But it's important to be very careful when you look at your figure, the crowdfunding goal, to not just think about what's a reasonable figure for that game.
Yeah.
Or this kind of project. I've seen other games go for 75,000 along this lines. That sounds like a reasonable figure. But also think about how much is the crowdfunding site going to get. Are you licensing software like Unreal Engine? Do I owe a royalty on those amounts? And which, in the case of Unreal Engine, you owe a royalty of 5% on gross revenue, including crowdfunding, but only to the extent that that revenue for crowdfunding is tied to in-game or product access generally. So if you have a $10 game access package and a $15 game plus special sword package and a $20 game plus special sword plus t-shirt package, then in the case of Unreal Engine, that royalty would tie to the $15 and not the $5 for the shirt. But these are things that go well beyond the what's a reasonable sounding figure for that game. So you might say, I'm going to get 75,000, but you might end up with, 60,000, at the end of that, based on the various things you have to pay people. And is that going to be enough for you to get over the line?
Well, earlier in the chat stream, somebody was mentioning having a business plan. There was a little bit of chat about that. And developing a plan, both financial and operational, is a good idea. I mean, just getting a spreadsheet out and or hell, just a pad and a piece of paper if you need to, and figuring out what is it gonna take to get to the execution goal, and then work from there. Because if you just go, well, 75K, as Canon said, 75K Kickstarters are moving like hotcakes, you may get your 75K, but you may end up short of your execution goal.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of Kickstarters that have been successful at they break down what they plan to use the funds for. It's almost like, the open book thing. It's like, hey, here's where the money needs to go, and here's why we think it needs to go there, and here's why we're asking for it. And they'll actually have part of that pie is broken out to Kickstarter royalty funds, those kind of things. Say, okay, great, that's immediately off the top. Now where's the money going, right? So that's good.
Another one that's perfect for Jay is publishers.
Yes, if you've got a game that you're in the first thing, it's probably not the best idea to approach publishers with what I like to call ideas on a napkin. You're now in this day and age, you've got the opportunity to get Unreal Engine for the barriers are completely non-existent. Develop a demo to the point where you can actually show something that's that has meaning, that can convey to a publisher what the game is like. The thing to keep in mind about publishers is that they avoid risk at all cost. It's their job to find products that will sell in the marketplace and avoid risk. And honestly, as indie developers, I would suggest looking hard at and considering, is the publisher necessary?
Right.
Given the amount of money that they're going to take in relation to the amount of money that's the product will get, can you release it yourself? There's a lot of opportunity for that. You've got with Steam and iOS and Android stores. You could possibly do it on your own.
Yeah, and at that point too, it's like, okay, if you know the audience you want to go towards, know the publishing platforms, like you said, self-publishing platforms, and then find out where there might be some trade-offs with doing those. Like, if you're going to be on Steam or iOS, you're probably going to have a little bit of a hurdle with exposure. It's okay, great. So keep that in mind.
Well, that's the thing. Noise is the big thing. That's getting identified in the marketplace, a very noisy marketplace.
Right. But even with that, it's like, okay, so now you know that, you can try to prepare and do some things, ahead of time, like budget some marketing, put some things together for PR. That way you can stand out, things that a publisher would actually make, do with you as well, if that isn't really an option for you.
Yep. So it's the game of gaming is changing quite a bit. It's evolving, and in these days, there's more and more power and flexibility to the developer, which is a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot more opportunity for self-publishing these days, and that's really exciting. But it does make the legal and business stuff that we're talking about way more important. So,
yes, because normally a publisher would deal with that headache
so
for
if
you.
You're gonna,
that's a good point.
You have to have the kind of disposition to take all that on. You have to be willing to dig in on the less exciting parts.
Yep. Because you can't ignore that. That's not something you can just like go, don't worry about it, it'll solve itself.
Right. You're really risking, because if you have a huge hit, if you're Minecraft and then you get huge, that's when you get noticed by somebody.
Yep.
Once you start collecting tons of money, then people start wondering about whether there are any claims against you. They don't wonder that when you just get started and nobody cares.
Yeah.
So that's why you've got to worry about these things before somebody cares.
Right.
Anyway, final bit we have sort of before audience questions. Game release for
Before we
UE4.
play Stump the Band.
UE4 game release. We've had the EULA access, formerly subscription access to the engine for a while. Hopefully folks are getting closer to release, and we already have had.
Yeah.
Most important is a page, Unreal Engine /release, that has, that you should really study. As you're reaching that point, you need to notify Epic of your release details, what the game is, who the publisher is, if there is one, who the developer is, where it's being, what platforms, etc. And that helps us, sort of establish the royalty relationship. And then it also talks about things like doing a EULA for your game, which is one of the questions we got in advance. We'll talk about, and that EULA needs to include protections for Epic. So part of your Unreal Engine license that you agree to in the EULA requires you in your EULA to your end users for a game using Unreal Engine to protect Epic, so that your end users don't come after Epic for frivolous claims.
You just stand right out in front of the building with a sword and a shield and protect us. Is that how that works?
Or you can use the language that we provide, the template language on that release page.
Your choice.
In your EULA.
Yeah, and with that too, like that lets us know, at least my team know that, hey, there's a game about to happen. We should know about it. How can we help promote you, right? Like, it's starts the conversation with us as a partner of yours, as opposed to just somebody who's just another step in the process, another box or two to check. It lets us get you on our radar into our promotion pipeline.
And that's
on social
critical,
everything
because
else, too.
again, the most critical thing as a game developer who has released a game is getting noticed.
Yeah.
It's a noisy field, so any chip you can play, any friendship or relationship you can leverage to get your message out to people, use it.
That's what we're here for. Cool.
So, should we do?
Yeah, we can hop into questions. We actually got a few. Actually, I had a couple that came through right now in chat, and I just wanted to make sure we can get nice clarity on them. So the royalties for 5% is not on auxiliary things to game. It's on the game.
That's right. So if you had a soundtrack or
T-shirts
or
and it's gross on game sales,
plush
right?
unicorn.
Like
Yep.
gross on game sales over.
That's right.
So if you sell the game on Steam for $1, we get a nickel.
We get a nickel after.
First $3,000.
Oh yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
In gross revenue for that game in that quarter.
In that quarter.
Yeah.
And gross revenue, as we said, doesn't include soundtracks and plushies and comic books,
Yeah.
but it does include purchase price, in-game purchases,
If there's
ad
in-game
revenue. Those are the big ones.
Got it. So if I made a game that made $10,000 a year, like $2,500 a quarter.
Yep.
And I made 2 of those, and then I made 3 of those, and that's just kind of where I sat. I don't know Epic anything.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
That's right.
Thanks.
That's what we're here for. We got you.
Cool. So yeah, if you want, I mean, we can dive into the rest of them. That one just came up, and I wanted some clarity on it too myself. The guys in the chat were talking, so yeah.
First one we have here is how do I go about creating a EULA for my game? What's important to think about? So the EULA, almost all games are licensed and not sold, just like any software. And that is your limited set of permissions to your end user of what they can and can't do with your game or your software. And generally that means you can use this for your personal use, personal enjoyment, and that's it. You can't sell it, you can't lease it, you can't license it to other people, you can't take it apart and reverse engineer the source code and use it in your own game, etc. In terms of how you go about creating it,
Copy paste. Oh, sorry.
you could consult your own counsel.
Copy paste, find and replace.
we that's, I haven't heard that.
I never heard that. That's awesome.
As I mentioned before, on the Unreal Engine release page, there is EULA template language that we provide, which covers the Unreal Engine protections.
Yeah.
But from a general sense, I guess sort of what Jay's saying is take a look at games that you respect and game developers that you respect in particular that are doing similar kind of games,
Yep.
and see what kind of things that they cover. There are, like Apple, I think, has or Google has like standard template
stuff.
EULAs, but be aware that their interests may not align perfectly with yours.
With enough research online, you'll come up with hopefully something that suits your needs. And then, as Canon started the conversation off, it's always best to have counsel of your own.
Yeah.
Because they can craft.
And this has come up a lot in, when I've contracted in the past or worked on my own games, and I've seeked legal counsel. There's always the question of when. Like, when do you do that? Is it like, I've got a game and I'm ready to ship, or I got a game idea and I need to
fecal matter, just about there.
Right.
No.
Well, it's a lot. I think a lot of people, like you talk about, working with your friends, especially, you'll end up in a situation where by the time you realize you need a lawyer, it's maybe a little too late. And so there are those, maybe it's major decisions that you have to make about the product itself,
Yes.
with your team, decisions like on, protecting, the trademark, things like that.
Yep.
But I've always told people when I've talked to them, it's like, as soon as you feel like you've got something that's good and you're going to pour yourself into it, I at least start the conversation.
So, I mean, this big decisions are the right time to hire an attorney if you're going to. So we're about to enter into a publishing agreement with this publisher. Well, you could be selling away 1 1/2 of your kidneys.
Yeah.
Is that something you're okay with? Did you even see it in there, right?
Yeah.
It's very important.
Do you even have kidneys to sell?
Kidneys, yes. Liver.
Only half.
Trademark is really important. Trademark is the one that nobody cares about until you become successful, and then it's too late.
And you care a lot.
Because your success is tied to your use of that trademark, which has brought that success combined with the trademark has brought the claim against you. So you can change your name then, but you don't want to change your name when you've already gotten success. So
you're going to fight it.
That's right.
To keep it. You're basically burning your own cash to keep your own cash.
Yes.
And if you hire an attorney to say, hey, I want to name my game this, he might say, oh, well, there's a Capcom game that has basically the same name, and they're probably not going to like that.
Yeah.
So.
And they might be able to crush you illegally.
That's right. So you can say, I'm going to go for it. I just love that name. You can take that risk, but at least you know about it.
Right.
I mean, you can do your own searching as well, just using Google, but it's really important. You can lose so much money in a trademark battle, even if you win.
Yeah.
So let me lay a little history on you here. This story has never been told publicly.
Oh,
I don't
please.
think hear it. So early in id Software's history, after the release of Doom, Data East, Japanese coin-op company,
Oh, yes.
had a game called Towers of Doom, which was trademarked. And I ended up having to go negotiate with the Data East folks out of Japan to secure the rights to continue to sell Doom under the name Doom.
Wow.
And it was hairy. We were a bunch of numbskulls who were making games, and we would have benefited from being on the other side of this conversation.
Right.
And we learned that lesson. It cost us some money.
Right.
So you're negotiating from a position of weakness at that point.
Yeah, because it was done. The game was out there.
Yeah.
So you're saying you were almost doomed.
No, because I was on
Oh,
the
that's
team.
right. They sent you out. Right.
There you
Very
go.
good.
There's your nugget of history. That's. I don't think it's ever. I don't even think that was
Well,
chronicled in the
it's-
anthology.
Yeah, it's funny. You look back at just IP laws, like whenever they first became a thing, you always find the Nintendo case. With it was Universal and Nintendo over Donkey Kong and King Kong, right?
Oh yeah. Right.
Yeah, that was a big one, right? Like, and that lawyer the one in the case ended up being like VP of Nintendo or something after that. It was really,
really?
crazy.
Careers can be made.
Yeah.
They're all part of the same family. It's just a big family. Kong is a common name in the jungle, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like, it's like with a band name, it's really hard now, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
bands out there, and it's the same with video games. They just pile up over time, right? It was a lot easier to come up with a video game name in like '84.
Yeah.
I mean, they still got it wrong, but
They still got it wrong.
Or no, they still
They
you
didn't
know,
have
Almost
to-
like we tried.
Yeah. Why didn't you use Google to look
Yeah,
to look
exactly,
up
good
Data
point.
East? Right?
It was probably it was pre-internet, I think.
Yeah, it was
I mean, maybe
barely.
It may have been web crawler.
Yeah. All right, that's funny.
The next one we have is advice on researching international law for game. My my advice for researching international laws for games is kind of don't rely on yourself to do that. It's
That's a deep well.
understanding the law in your own country is hard enough. Understanding the law of another country is extremely risky. In most cases, like if you're doing a game here in the U.S. and you release on Apple or Steam, your risks, international risks, are pretty low, right?
Yes.
But if you are doing a deal with a Saudi game publisher, if those exist, then it's probably a good idea to hire a lawyer in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
So
It also depends on the agreement, where the agreement is, the jurisdiction of the document itself, because you could actually do an agreement with say a French publisher where the agreement is domiciled or has venue and jurisdiction in the United States. So at that point you want to have a US lawyer, right?
yes, that's right. There's some exceptions to what I said before. If you had a flag burning game or some particularly culturally offensive game that is going to be marketed in that jurisdiction, you better look into it, because
Yeah.
a lot of countries
Good
have very
point,
strict
fair
laws.
point, yes.
And then one that applies to everybody is privacy law. So if you've just got some downloadable game and it's on Apple and people download it and pay for it and play it, fine. If you're collecting personal information, names, email, ages, addresses, credit card numbers, etc., IP addresses of individuals, especially if it's a game directed at children, then
COPPA rules.
well, but we're talking about international COPPA in
Oh,
the
yeah,
U.S.
yeah.
and then and then even worse, or even more in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More concern.
There's a different set of laws, different set of rules in, say, China, different set of rules in Australia. It depends on where you go.
Right. So if you start collecting data, personal data about your end users, particularly from other countries, but really even in the U.S., that it gets a little hairier under privacy law, and it's worth counsel there.
Yeah.
Shipping in multiple countries. Jay?
Oh yeah.
Golly. Well, if you're
So the question is, what should I look out for in regards to shipping in multiple countries?
well, if you're on, say, iOS or Android, or you're going to ride over Steam, you get the natural benefit of being able to use their networks and their distribution platforms, or even PlayStation and Xbox One, for example. You get their networks to roll over. But if you're gonna do your own
Right.
release of and have your own thing, that, as Canon mentioned, just from a legal standpoint, you need to understand the laws of the local laws of the land that you're going to,
Or have a guy for that.
have a guy
Girl
for that.
Like if
Thanks,
you were
somebody.
releasing a box game in Argentina,
You better understand what's going on.
that's right, because they might require a picture of a burning smoking lung, on like a cigarette
front,
package,
yeah.
and they're changing all the time.
Yes.
Like in Brazil, right? You need to have some the number 21 on the front if it's got any violence in it.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Well, actually, that brings up a good point. Most territories now require some kind of a rating system. So if you're going to release a PC game, or probably any game at all, you probably need to research, is that game required to be rated in that area, especially if you've got a game that's going to push over, out of, say, the everyone, what we recognize as the everyone, and goes into teen or mature, or adult. The rules are different in almost every territory, and there's different governing bodies that deal with that.
Yeah, I hear a lot from our Australian friends. They're like, curses.
Oh yeah, they're tough.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I'm actually cleaning. You nailed a lot of these earlier in talking, so I'm just kind of pulling some of them out.
Right.
We're just good that way.
Yeah.
Public domain is one I definitely want to talk about because I see this a lot. So the question is, public domain, how do we make use of this license as well as other licenses commonly used by independent developers?
Oh.
So just as an initial point, public domain isn't a license. And what is commonly thought to be public domain isn't. So public domain is sort of a special category of
Everything
thing.
you know is wrong.
It's a special category of thing under copyright law where effectively copyrights associated with it have expired. Just because something is online and doesn't have a license attached to it definitely doesn't mean it's public domain, and it definitely doesn't mean that you have permission to use it. The closest thing, if you wanted to release a game under a public domain, so free to the public, the closest I'm aware of is the CCO, or Creative Commons Zero license, which is the Aleister Crowley, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law kind of license. That's very uncommon. Usually if somebody wants a sort of free to use open sourcey kind of license, they'll use MIT or BSD, or a little more stringent Apache license. Those are the most common liberal open source licenses. And then there's the, I guess, arguably more liberal or socialist, I don't know, licenses are the so-called copyleft licenses, like GPL, where it requires the recipient to also make their use open source. That's pretty uncommon for games, but you will still see it. Sometimes the most common I've seen is in game jam situations where they kind of require the product of the game jam to be used and toyed with by others. So games that are intended for other people to manipulate.
To break down.
In most cases, if you're making a commercial game, you want to control. And so you're not going to be licensing under open source.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I'm trying to catch up over here.
Is at what point should one declare themselves an actual business? And what type of business the best for indie developers?
Yeah,
There's several questions here, so we should unpack this.
When do you go from chance to chance games? And we kind of mentioned that earlier too.
Trademark infringement. I don't know.
Up against the wall, punk.
Well, in between those, I'll call not my lawyer, and then.
No, I personally, I would do it as soon as possible, as early if I was setting up a business, I would do it.
Yeah.
If you're serious about it.
If you're serious about it,
if you know you're going to move forward with
that
this,
is a step I would
yeah.
take. And I think it's important. It establishes the protective mechanisms that Canon mentioned earlier, and it's not a difficult step to take. Costs a little bit of money, but not a lot.
But then you can throw some expenses at it, depending, right? So
Yeah.
if you're accruing things that are for business,
Yep.
right? So.
And the next question in that list was what are the best types of businesses for indie developers?
Small
Depends where
teams.
you're at. It depends on the jurisdiction. And even in the United States, it probably depends state by state.
It does.
Yeah.
So,
For sure.
So that's a much longer answer.
Talk to the comptroller, talk to a lawyer.
Yeah, I would say I'd get to Google and start to research.
And most of them, LLC, LLP, corporation, they generally serve the same purpose in terms of separating the individual from the entity, but they can have different tax obligations. And
Yes.
in a partnership, the partners will be equal owners, but do you want that, right? Like, is it going to be one person in charge of the company who's the sole shareholder, right? So if you want to control everything and have employees, you don't want a partnership.
Right.
Hmm.
This is a pretty deep subject, and it can be easy to set up an entity. The forms and how you structure the equity or the ownership can get pretty deep. So I would encourage research and counsel.
Next one up, what's best to keep in mind regarding taxes, U.S. and international?
Pay them. Next question.
No, I disagree. Yeah, that's a tough one, and none of us here are.
he's like, not your lawyer, but I disagree.
Your tax return is the beginning of the negotiation with the IRS.
Whoa,
right.
whoa.
Well, actually, under the organic constitution, citizens aren't obligated to pay tax.
Oh, danger, Will Robinson.
Yeah, none of us are accountants, and really it's very wise and important, unless you are a tax expert, and particularly in the U.S., it's very complicated to hire an accountant. A lot of individuals do that anyway,
Yes.
So it's not an especially costly expense. But, if you're a partnership, for example, you might have to deal with quarterly tax payments.
Yes.
And those could include estimated taxes. Very complicated. And if
Those
you've
are
got
not the best.
no, nobody likes
They're not
those.
a lot of fun, yeah.
No.
And if you've got employees, you probably have income tax withholding obligations regarding that. Unless you are a particularly keen financial wizard, having an accountant is extremely important there.
Yes.
Cool.
What happens when a business fails or declines? What happens to the IP, and are there other personal implications? Good question. And I appreciate the whoever asked it thinking about what happens at the end of the life. That's a kind of a common lawyer question and an uncommon non-lawyer question. People tend to think about the happy times and not what happens when things go wrong. There's usually 3 reasons why a business ends. One is acquisition or merger, so that can be a really happy ending, maybe. And then at that time, the lawyers associated will sort of handle all of the disposition of the assets in connection with that transaction. There can be a winding up, which is sort of a neutral end, where you no longer you're taking your product off the market. You don't owe anybody anything. You don't have any contractor liens. You don't have any outstanding claims. There's no pending litigation or threatened litigation. You've paid all your bills. You've paid your taxes. You can wind up the entity and it's gone. And then finally, there's bankruptcy, which is your debts overwhelm you, and you go to court and say, I can't handle it I can't pay my debts. And then you essentially hand over your estate. Depending on the type of bankruptcy you have, you hand over your estate to the bankruptcy court, and it divvies up your assets, apportioning them to the debtors pro rata based on how much they have. And in that case, the associated IP will be treated as an asset. So if you had a game or games, the bankruptcy court will try and sell them. Unfortunately, that's not a great way to sell a game, and particularly if it's a live operation. So. But if you have a
They don't
corporate,
have like a publishing wing that they just use to try to.
no, unfortunately not.
No.
They're not as tech savvy as you might hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly, bankruptcy court isn't fun for anybody.
Awesome.
I guess we talked about the
Self-publishing.
one.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just now getting into some of the chat ones. I know it's a little bit past 3 right now. You guys still have a little bit of time, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So you want to talk about some chat ones?
Yeah, they're in here now, so I'm trying to roll down to them. Oh gosh, where is
Why don't
my
you do it?
mouse? There you go. So yeah, any of these right here.
Actually, what is the most important thing to do as an indie developer to protect your game legally? That's like the single most important thing.
To protect your
No
game
pressure.
legally, I guess just from a very general standpoint and not from circumstances.
You're
vary.
general counsel. So
I am general
standpoints
counsel.
are okay.
So I only speak generally.
Right.
And always leave people wanting more.
I actually wanted you to kind of come, like a military general, suit on.
No
I do
lollygagging
have
in my troop.
I am very believable in that role. They're just like, that's
Yes.
Maggots.
that's a tough guy right there.
Yeah.
I would say trademark. For an indie developer, trademark. Because there's so many games out there, and you're kind of rolling the dice every time in the hopes of making it big.
Mm.
And it would be so, heartbreaking
If
to
you
make it big.
Got all the important parts done except for that one.
Yeah. Copyright is something that that exists at the moment of creation. Registration has its benefits, so it's worth looking into. It can help when you sue somebody for copyright infringement. It can make it easier, but you can still sue somebody for copyright infringement even if you don't have a registration.
Yeah.
Trademark, there are some trademark rights that come out of using a mark, but it's very hard to go after somebody for using a mark that you have been using in business if you don't have a trademark registration.
Got it.
And maybe even more importantly, if you have a trademark registration that sort of definitively demonstrates your usage as of a point in time in the market, then that's the best shield against another party coming after you.
And all those notes too, like if there's somebody else that had a lawyer that's trying to do the same thing, they would see that you're filed, right? Like
Yes.
That's right.
that's like the
That's right.
first shield. It's like, oh,
Yes.
somebody's already got it. Great.
Right, there's sort of an intent to use. It gets published before it gets registered, and that allows other lawyers to say, hey, my client, that trademark that this other entity is trying to register is kind of similar. Why don't you two start talking now before it gets used in the marketplace?
Yeah.
And I should have mentioned before that trademark registrations are by jurisdiction. So that meant that if somebody in the 60s in South Africa heard about McDonald's in the U.S.
Yeah.
and heard that it was doing well, they could start doing business in McDonald's as McDonald's in South Africa, file a trademark, and then McDonald's could take over the world and come to South Africa. And they would say, you don't have trademark rights here.
About it.
Your trademark.
See,
Burger King in Australia is called Hungry Jack.
See, I think this happened to me. So you're from Texas, Louisiana. Whataburger doesn't exist outside of a lot of places in the South.
Yeah.
There are two Whataburgers in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're not Whataburger, man.
Really?
They're different.
Are they
places.
A-frames?
No, they're not the same company.
Oh,
but
really?
they're named the same thing. Can you imagine my disappointment? It was pretty rough.
That's horrible.
I know. So it does happen.
I love Whataburger.
Does that count
Do
as
they
a
have the ketchup?
first world problem?
Wait, hold on.
This is
Wait,
this is relevant.
This is important. Do they have the ketchup?
No.
Oh my God.
They didn't have like a drive. There was like a little mom and pop. There were two of them, and I was like, surely they can't both not be
I
Whataburger.
found a Whataburger.
And they were both the non-Whataburger. Anyway, you can order the ketchup, and I have some.
I know
if
I
you
have
need
it. I got it by
Okay,
the bottle
great.
now.
Yeah,
I
same
got
here.
it.
All right,
You
cool.
got HEB sells it.
All right.
But you want to
Real best guy.
you want to be careful. It's expensive, not as expensive as patent to seek trademark registration. So we're talking in the couple of $1,000 range. So I don't want to diminish that cost, but you can't do it all over the world because that would be
But you
tens of
can't hit
thousands.
major territories.
Right,
Like
but
you can't hit EU as
That's
one.
right. Thankfully,
bulk.
the EU, they have a CTM or community trademark that covers the whole European Economic
Right.
Community.
Hmm.
That's really nice. But if you know that you're releasing and focusing on China or you're focusing on Japan, then think about registration in those territories as well. If you had a Spanish language game, maybe you want to register in Mexico
Sure.
or Spain.
Or other larger territories in Spanish-speaking Latin America.
That's right. So you have to be kind of judicious about where you seek trademark registration. You can't hit everywhere, but U.S. and Europe is at least a good start for most people.
Yes.
Cool. All right, let's see what else I can't update from over here. We can roll down a little bit and see.
Is there a site that has common legal agreements that we could use? Is there a repository of?
I can't recommend one. I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Just
I would be
Probably not. Yeah.
No.
I would be wary. You're risky. It's a risk because the person who wrote it doesn't know your situation and isn't able to understand and appreciate your interests, even if they wanted to.
Yep.
Cool. I can't update those anymore because my computer just lost internet. So I'm gonna look over my shoulder with you.
Oh,
guys.
sure. If my game includes a subscription, does Epic get royalties on the monthly subscription fees? Yes.
Even if it's free, even if your game is free, but your game has a subscription.
Well, I would say your game isn't free then.
Right.
But in any event, that's gross revenue for the game. So the definitely important point on the EULA royalties is that gross revenue is broad-reaching and
Yes.
it touches any kind of alternative forms of payment for a game, almost any.
Through the game.
Not
whether
donation,
whether it's the purchase of the game itself or content through the game.
Like including advertisements in the game. So it's a free game, except it's got ad revenue.
Right.
Then that's captured.
Cool.
Somebody asked me, what would I estimate the average cost per developer per year at a company like Epic if I were budgeting for end developers for a project? That's really hard to answer because a developer in North Carolina is going to be different. The average cost of a developer in North Carolina is going to be different than the average cost of a developer in
San
Los
Francisco.
Angeles
Yeah.
versus an average developer in Vancouver versus Montreal or New York City or China.
And that changes for contractors. It changes for, like, there are a lot of students that are stellar, hyper talented.
Yes.
That just want to come in and they'll
It
work
also
for
changes
lower,
depending on where you are in the life cycle in your life cycle. So you may be like a young indie developer who's willing to go through the macaroni and cheese time frame where you're willing to take less in order to do more to build your organization, versus working at an established shop where it's got a completely different economic situation.
Yeah.
So the answer is it depends.
I saw a question in the chat stream that brought up a point that it's important that we didn't cover earlier, which is about third-party software. So Unreal Engine is a big piece of third-party software for you, but the Unreal Engine includes third-party software in it, so various open source licenses or
JPEG. I think that was
physics,
on the list or something. Yeah.
bigger
Yeah.
ones.
Physics.
And you might have additional software that you incorporate in your game. All of those are going to be under a license, and each of those licenses may have notice obligations. So if you go to like a big game like Assassin's Creed, somewhere in the menus you will find a third-party software notice listing.
Yeah.
And that is, you look through the licenses of the third-party software that you're using and see which ones say, if you're using the software in your product, you must say includes copyright, copyright such and such.
And some of this is on that release page, I believe,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like we added some wording to that. I remember about 6 or 7 months ago that kind of pointed out where you should be able to find some of this stuff.
So the third-party software licenses are in your install directory for the editor.
We can probably grab a couple more before we got to get out to other meetings. So if y'all want to see if I can let's get to
Hey,
this
you're
page
back.
right
You
here.
can use your
Too
computer again.
fast.
Yeah, I'm just gonna grab this page. There's a few on here. I haven't been able to check to see if we've got these already, but
At what point does the last one, I know where this is going, that no normal person could be probably required to read it, or you see,
For a EULA?
yeah, see the last question, it kind of truncates
Oh,
off.
sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
At what point does a EULA become so verbose that no normal human can be expected to actually read it? Apple? I think that's the point.
Yes.
No.
All right, who out there actually reads the Apple EULA?
well,
Who?
yeah.
Looking
I
at the
guess
thing.
that's
Who?
kind of a
Do you? Do you?
I wait for other people to read it, and then I get the TLDR.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I click the button. Anyway.
I don't.
You know, I mean, I guess it's sort of a facetious question. I will say that we worked very hard at Epic to have a EULA. It's still a legal document. It's still a contract. It's not intended to be fun, but we tried very hard to make it
Not fun.
no, to make it like
It's
legible
ours is
and accessible
We make
by
we worked them, yes.
by a layperson. We didn't write it with the intent like, oh, you're just gonna have to get a lawyer to understand it, because we know that a lot of the people that use the engine won't have a lawyer, at least not for just everything that they do, and we still want them to understand.
Yeah.
And we've also got the FAQ as well.
Yes.
So hopefully, you
Yes.
understand it. If you don't, you can certainly post questions on Answer Hub, and we try and.
Yeah, it's we want, as speaking selfishly for Epic, we want to make sure that our users understand the EULA, thus making it more accessible, thus providing a
Yeah.
FAQ to break it down even further, thus being available on Answer Hub. It's really important to us to have that level of accessibility.
Yeah, it's part of everything, right? It's like we're trying to get out of the way of everybody else's success, right?
Yep.
And that's just engine in general, and this is just when you get to ship or you have those important bits too,
Right.
whatever we can do to help there. And on that note, if there's areas that we can improve, shoot it into feedback for us, right?
Absolutely.
Like we have the forum, we comb those forums and take a lot of that to heart. So
I've seen a couple questions about UT mods, and without addressing them, the question specifically, we can talk about it generally. We do invite and encourage our UT community to create UT mods. There have been discussion of like selling levels on the UT marketplace, and there's already one level up, a community level, but it's for free, I believe.
yeah, I think so.
But there was a question about royalties associated with that, and in our EULA, there's no royalties associated with sales through Epic. So we have sort of a, I guess like a marketplace fee, but there's no royalty on top of that. So we don't double dip. And then there's also questions about copyright with mods. So same kind of things that we're talking about before. Don't include Sonic in your UT level. And we're probably going to see that, and say like, oh yeah, we're not putting this up. But when you submit a mod for the marketplace, part of that submission and the contract for putting it up does have you, the mod developer, agreeing that you have the rights to give Epic this stuff. And if some third party comes to us and says, oh yeah, they totally ripped off my this or that,
That's my texture on that.
then we're going to pull it and look into it.
Yeah.
We have that obligation to the third parties.
Yes.
Cool. Where's my mouse? There we go. All right. You can see if there's anything down here. Oh, this is an interesting one.
What is it? My personal rewards that include early access.
So Patreon, are you familiar with Patreon?
No.
So Patreon's a site where you can just raise money for what you're doing. Just
Okay.
people could just like
So it's like GoFundMe kind of.
people just drop money in your bucket,
Just like a tip jar?
kind of pretty much.
Well, so there's no. So I can't speak to that site specifically. I know you gave a general overview for it, but there's no royalty on donations that are just general. Right?
That are not tied to.
That are not tied to access. So like if the game's free, and you can give them $5 if you want to, it doesn't change anything for the gamer, then no royalties. But if you give a $5 donation, it gives you the special sword, then that's really game revenue.
It's essentially an exchange of cash for goods. A lot of times with Patreons, people will raise money for something that is free, and the higher they raise that money, usually the more stuff comes into all that stuff, right? So you might be building it.
Yeah, and I
So
would
it's a little
say
bit-
under those circumstances, it's not. There's no royalty. It's still a donation, right? You don't. There's no quid pro quo, right?
Right.
You're not guaranteed to get anything for your money.
Yeah.
That the way you've described it.
Okay, yeah. We can look into that one a little bit more tightly, I guess, later, just to make sure, because I don't know all the exact rules of Patreon.
But from a general standpoint, if you're not getting anything for a donation, you're just giving it, and they get it, and they can do what they want to with it, then that's not royalty.
Cool. That sounds good. All right, I'll let you get on to your next meeting, Canon, unless you want to grab one
Yeah,
more.
there it
Is
goes.
that it? Yeah.
That was it.
I just looked
Next
down, I was like,
meeting.
yeah, here it comes.
It's coming up. If you were to accept it's the question: if you were to accept a YOLO before you can use the software, why
like
are
that
they
question.
generally not shown until after the initial sale? Shouldn't they be asked before money exchanges hands? Otherwise, exchange is already considered acceptance. So, it's not enough time to get into that in detail. Basically, the law, at least in the United States, has accepted the click wrap contract. So you buy the software. You know, it used to come from like you go buy a Microsoft box product in the store. You purchased it. You got the box. You go home. You install it. You can't install it until you agree.
Yeah.
And basically, courts are okay with that arrangement. But if you should be able to get your money back, right? Like if
If
Right.
it's completely
You
against what
reject
you
it.
believe
That's
in.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And there are times where if you have no way to negotiate an agreement, if it's a famous case was like a cruise line and the contract was printed on the back of a ticket. So you buy the ticket and they give you the ticket and there's a little ticket that's about this big and it's
Yep.
got thousands of words on
It's
printed.
the fine print,
Right. And it says
the
you
Willy
know,
Wonka fine print.
if you get sick on your second day of the cruise, we'll keel haul you.
Throw you overboard.
Then courts have said that's unreasonable, right?
Yeah.
It's a commercially unreasonable transaction. You can't make it really, really hard for
Yeah.
people and subject them to onerous terms.
Got it. Oh, makes sense. All right. Well, cool. Unless you can grab one more, I think we're probably all right. I mean, it's on you. I don't want to make you late.
Role of font in trademark or title name. That's a good one. It is commonly believed that if you can download a font online without paying for it, you're good to go. No, that's not the case. There's a lot of fonts are in questionable territory in terms of IP categorization. Nevertheless, the font owner is generally understood to own rights in the TTF files themselves. See, if you recreated the font on your own, right? If you just like printed out the way the A looks and you just made your own font file,
recreated the thing.
then that's a different thing. But if you use the file that comes from the foundry, and they sell it for $400 for web-only use, and you
Right.
find another site that sells it for free because they took it from the seller and they just put it up for free, that doesn't mean that you have the right to use it.
Right.
So it's important, particularly for things like your game title, to find a font where you feel confident and comfortable that the license terms associated with the font give you the rights to use it the way that you want to use it. A lot of times the fancier fonts, the foundries have complicated tiers of usage, right?
Right.
You can use it for web for no more than 10,000 hits a month or something, like that stuff sucks, but
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
but you gotta, those
gotta
are the
read that
terms,
stuff,
right? Those
yeah.
are the terms
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
license, and they have the right to go after you.
Wow.
I don't see a lot of like font-related litigation, but
I know. Yeah, it's probably like a super specialized lawyer. It's like, hi.
Font lawyer.
Yeah,
Like
Artie
maritime.
Pupkin. Font lawyer. Nice to meet you. So,
All right.
Type reference.
all right, quit asking me to take one more.
All right. We'll get out of here. Guys, thank you so much for coming and
Awesome.
hanging out with us.
Thanks for having us. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So thanks for watching, and we will be back next week on Tuesday. We've got a training stream or a support stream on mobile development. So we've got all the people that are like leads on either the platform itself or individual disciplines like Android, iOS, all of that. You got a lot of people coming on the stream next week. So if you're doing a mobile game, you got questions about development, you're getting hung up on something, head that way and definitely check it out. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
See ya.